Hello, everyone. This is Mike McDermott from Dbacks Under Review, and we're going to be kickstarting the Dbacks Under Review podcast here. So, obviously, it's a great week to talk about baseball. We've got the winter meetings coming up. In fact, the Diamondbacks have already made one key rotation signing. We can talk about that, the Ketel Marte trade rumors, as well as another free agent the Diamondbacks are linked to, Pete Fairbanks, as a possible closer target. So, anyways, thanks everyone for tuning in. Like I said, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the Dbacks Under Review YouTube channel. And make sure to check out Dbacks Under Review on Substack at dbacksunderreview.com. That's where you get my writing. You're covering all things about the Arizona Diamondbacks. We get our news reactions. We get prospect content. You can see my coverage of the Arizona Fall League there. No one else in the Diamondbacks prospect space cover the Fall League as much as me. You can ask any of the MLB beat writers on that. As well as some analysis content, we break down player performances, deep dive trends. Not necessarily for fantasy, but just kind of just keep an eye on the team. And then once we get into the regular season, we'll probably do game breakdowns. I haven't decided on that, but that's basically what you come to expect. Again, that's at dbacksunderreview.com. No spaces, no hyphen after the D. The first D in Dbacks. So we're going to kick things off. Winter meetings. Diamondbacks are obviously looking in for a starting rotation upgrade. They've already signed 28-year-old right-hander Michael Soroka, who pitched for the Washington Nationals and the Chicago Cubs. So Soroka is, if you've been following baseball for a long time, Soroka is a former top prospect for the Braves that ended up breaking out as a rookie 6 WAR in his rookie season 2019. Lost it to Pete Alonso for the Rookie of the Year balloting, although you could have made the argument that Soroka beat Alonso in the WAR department if you use just Baseball Reference. But I digress. So anyways, going back to it, Soroka has a pretty lengthy injury history, missed all of 21 and 22 with an injury after an injury-plagued 2020 season, but we don't blame too much stuff on that season. And after that kind of bounced around, pitched for the Braves in his final year in 23, Chicago, in the White Sox in 2024, before heading to Washington, making their rotation out of spring training. In fact, I believe Soroka actually made 2 starts against the Diamondbacks. We'll look that up here. So one of the nice things about Baseball Reference is you can look this up and we'll get to that. We'll share that on screen for those watching on YouTube. For those just listening in on the podcast, if you find it on Substack, just do a quick Google search of Michael Soroka and you can just get it there. So you set that up here. Set this up here, and then obviously some of the scenes in StreamYard are kind of So we'll try and do that one. We'll switch to a picture-in-picture layout. Here, haven't used this thing in a while. Not since the Snakes on the Diamond podcast. All right, so we'll zoom in here. You can see Soroka. You can see Soroka here, Baseball Reference page. So we're going to pull up his game logs from 25. I think he pitched against the Diamondbacks both series against the Nationals. I'll have to double check. He did not pitch in the road series at the start of the season, although he did have 2 different injuries in the year. One was a shoulder. After he got traded to the Cubs, it's right shoulder injury. I forget, and we'll look up the one with the Washington Nationals real quick. Wrong MLB. We pulled up the piece from Steve Gilbert wrote for MLB.com. All right, so pulling up his transaction history, and you have to click more because so he had a bicep strain in April after making 1 start, and then had the shoulder strain after getting traded to the Chicago Cubs. That's what happened. So you have two arm injuries, which is obviously a concern. That's why he was available for $7.5 million. $7.5 million. All right. So his start against Arizona was here, May 31st. Better known as a game where the Diamondbacks kind of blew chunks. Yeah, it was the game where Brandon Fott got hammered in the first inning and didn't get an out. That was a pretty sobering series. If you go back and look at the 2025 season, that was a pretty sobering series with the Washington game one. Diamondbacks defense falls apart. Merrill Kelly on the mound. Game two, Brandon Fott doesn't get an out. Game three, Corbin Burns blows his arm out. That was a pretty sobering series, but I digress. So, anyways, that's just one way to use baseball reference in the game log. We're going to go to Baseball Savant because there's Baseball Savant and pick up Soroka's numbers here, so we'll share that. So here's the Baseball Savant. We'll blow it up for everyone to see. So you can see here, the running joke, obviously, is the Diamondbacks love the Diamondbacks decision you can almost bank on based on expected stats. And you can look at here, 346 expected ERA, 210 expected batting average. Those rank really high. If you go through Baseball Savant page, the more red it is, the better. The more blue it is, the worse. So you got really good expected ERA, expected batting average. And if you ever wonder what those two metrics mean, so the idea of the expected stats is it calculates what a hitter's batting average should be based on solely the batted ball, exit velocity, and launch angle. I believe there is a sprint speed component, but the number of batted balls in that situation that where sprint speed would actually make a difference is pretty minute. Unless you have Corbin Carroll running, it doesn't really probably factor into XBA that much. So you can tell, and then also you look kind of down at the metric rates. Exit velos and hard hit rate are right around the league average. Walk rate, solid 7%, better than the league average of 8%. Strikeout rate at 25% would obviously be better than any Diamondbacks starter in 2025. So there's definitely some upside in that arm. Of course, the problem is Soroka can't stay healthy. If you go back his rookie year, he threw 174 innings. Since then, I think he's thrown 174 innings in his career. So the last two seasons, he made nine starts, 25 games, pitched 79 innings with Chicago. Last year with the Nationals and the Cubs, 89 innings in 17 starts, 22 games. And Soroka ended up moving to the bullpen to play more of a long relief role with the Cubs as they went down the stretch. So my initial thoughts on the signing is it's a great upside play for $7.5 million. The only question is Soroka going to be healthy? Can he give you 120 innings? And if we're saying, well, why not more than 120? Why not expect 165, 170, 180? I'm just going to say this right off the bat. The likelihood that a starter is going to give you 30 starts and 150 innings in the season is very low, unless they've already established a track record of doing so. And Soroka has only done that once in his career, and that was 6 years ago. So instead, I think a realistic target would be 20 starts and 100 innings. If the Diamondbacks can get 100 innings out of Soroka with solid run prevention numbers, good strikeout walk rates, I think they'd call that a win. That's an upside play. It gives the Diamondbacks more time to develop their pitching prospects in a sense. Although, like I said, the Diamondbacks system in terms of pitching prospects is kind of hit or miss. There's not a lot of upside at the top. We're going to see what Daniel Egan, David Hageman, or you can make a case for the top two pitching prospects in the system. I think Baseball America has David Hageman as the top pitching prospect in the system at 5. But Hageman's probably not even going to be a factor in 2026. 2026, maybe you look at him as a 2027 ETA. Same with Daniel Egan. You're just hoping that Soroka gives you some innings and you don't have to rely too much on Cole Drake, Dylan Ray, and Mitch Bratt, Human Lin, Spencer Giesting, although we don't know if Giesting's going to make it through the Rule 5 draft. In my opinion, not a very high chance that he gets selected. His numbers in AAA weren't very good, especially the first 10 or so starts he had there. So I think Giesting with a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, I think, will survive the Rule 5 draft. So, in my opinion, Diamondbacks have a lot of I guess you can say fringe rotation guys at the top of their system. Drake's the only one I would probably project more than a number 5. Like I said. So with the rotation thing set up, they can't do just that. And obviously Nick Picoro breaking the news on the signing $7.5 million plus $2 million in incentives. I assume that's going to be tied to innings and starts because you can't pay. You can't give him a huge guarantee because of that thing. So kind of just, like I said, Picoro reporting from the winter meetings. Pull up the Hazen quote here. So Hazen talking about in the position of still going to end up same spot. Oh wait, that's Ketel Marte. So anyways, I assume Soroka will slot in their opening day rotation. You're going to have, well, assume Ryan Nelson, Brandon Pfaadt, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Soroka in your rotation. I feel like they have, that's 4 of their starting 5 going into 2026. I think they have to gain one more. The only 2 free agents they've been linked to are Giolito and Kelly. I talked about that in a previous video if you want to check that out. Like I said, so the Soroka move's fine if there's another move coming along with it. I'm not sure what's going to materialize. So moving into the second topic, we'll talk about Ketel Marte and the rumors surrounding him. So, of course, we're in rumor season, obviously, and we've seen about 30, I guess, I don't feel the need to censor myself here for saying this, but 30 dog shit trade ideas for Ketel Marte. And it's like, I hate to say this, but this is a message that everyone hears. The Diamondbacks are not trading Ketel Marte for prospects. Like, there has to be a controllable starting pitcher in the deal, or it's Hazen's going to hang up the phone after trying to change the conversation. Of course, I use that phrase because that's exactly what Hazen said in the 23 winter meetings. Also, don't try to send him a text when you're trying to negotiate a trade. And obviously, Ketel Marte rumors came at the forefront when it came to the winter meetings and live coverage. I'm not sure who's there. I assume the Arizona Republic. It's Steve Gilbert's going to be there for MLB. I don't know who else is going to be there. Maybe Arizona Sports as well, but I don't think so. That's a different story for a different day to discuss, not really thing. So going to the Hazen quote on Ketel Marte, I'm still in the position that I feel like we're going to end up in the same spot that we're coming into this, but we don't know. I've said this before. I just feel like it's our responsibility to at least engage with what the market is saying to us and listen to what teams have to say. We'll see where that goes over the next couple of days. And of course, when we get to the topic, it's like, why would Dynamax trade Ketel Marte? The real reason is they're not necessarily trying to trade Ketel Marte. It's one of those things where you have a player with a lot of value on your roster. You have a lot of needs to fill in the roster. Soroka, again, is probably not the sole player. The Diamondbacks need to address the rotation. They don't have the payroll space of the Dodgers or the Mets, and I would argue that because of those two teams, the Diamondbacks are in a situation where they're going to have to overpay for a closer. They're down the road. It's like they have maybe enough money to make 3, I guess you could say medium profile or higher signings. They're not going to be playing at the top of the market because they have so many needs, not a lot of space. So I think like when we go from there, Ketel Marte is certainly a trade chip the Diamondback could do to satisfy the rotation need and maybe pick up more than that. You pick up a bat or you pick up a possible closer with control. A lot of different things. And of course, with the player Ketel Marte's resume, 16 WAR over the B-WAR over the last 3 years, may or may not be on the market. The teams are discussing, not just shutting down conversation. They're going to check in. And just about every team looking to upgrade their offenses done so. You have the Rays, I think. Just checking real quick. You have the Mets. Rays, the Mets, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, etc., etc., etc. All those teams checking in on if Ketel Marte is available in a trade. And then obviously the Diamondbacks are going to at least entertain discussions. I don't know if it'll go beyond that unless there's a team willing to pay for that because Marte is under contract for 6 years and I believe the number 71 million remaining. I'll have to double check. Use Spot Rack for contracts, so I don't use them to estimate player value. I don't like where they come with that one. So if we talk about Ketel Marte, they just signed him to a 6-year, $116 million extension back in April of this year. So they're not necessarily motivated to trade a player. And I think that clubhouse story thing is bullshit. Or if not bullshit, definitely overplay. People took more out of it than they should have. Like, not every player is necessarily going to be a great team guy, but you can survive that, obviously. I don't think there's any deal breakers issues with the clubhouse situation, and then obviously Perdomo, by the end of the weekend, did everything he could to nip that thing in the bud. So then you look at that situation. Marte is Marte's on the books for Marte's. This will probably be the last offseason that Ketel Marte discussions will happen without his necessarily without his consent. He has a 5-team no trade clause, but if he spends 10 days on the 2026 roster with the Diamondbacks, he would gain 10-5 rights, and 10-5 rights is you have 10 years of Major League service time and 5 years with your current club. And Marte is entering the season with 9 years and 162 days of service time. So 10 days in the season, 10-5 kicks in. So Ketel Marte can when that kicks in, Marte can veto any trade to any team because that's just a collectively bargained right. I don't expect that to change in the new CBA. But from a luxury tax standpoint, Ketel Marte is just under $20 million, $19.4 million. Although, considering his track record, you'll certainly pay that kind of money for that kind of player. I said, I'm going to pull up Fangraphs. I'm going to pull up Fangraphs just for fun. We'll just compare second baseman. Primary position, second baseman, 2023 to 2025. So we'll just compare the last 3 seasons. So in terms of F4, and we'll pull up the leaderboard here. Pull up the leaderboard. Ketel Marte ranks number 1 by a lot. Okay, we're just comparing the last 3 years. So obviously notable comparisons is Jose Altuve, Jazz Chisholm Jr., Marcus Semien, Nico Horner. And then when you look at just strictly at offense, Ketel Marte just crushes everyone. He's you don't need me to explain the stats. You just look at the stats there. He pretty much just kills everybody. So you're talking about the best second baseman in baseball the last 3 years. Now, of course, there's obviously a concern that Marte can't hold up over the course of the season. I'd argue the 2024 season was a freak injury with a dirty slide, but the 2025 season was the first time really the hamstring came up as a problem after it almost, I guess you can say it heavily affected 21 and 22 for Marte. I'm not necessarily, other than the hamstring stuff, I probably wouldn't be too worried about injury concerns. So with the top second baseman on the market, the Diamondbacks should ask for a lot, especially considering they're still you got 6 years and about $90 million left on the deal. So let's see what the USA Today thing is. So like I said, there are teams that probably could meet the Diamondbacks asking price, and if it does happen, a trade will happen. But we're talking about a controlling pitcher, probably a major league ready pitching prospect, a major league ready bat, and then more, and maybe a back end guy. Like the Diamondbacks to trade Ketel Marte, they would have to literally sweep all their offseason needs in one go to make that happen. Because if they do trade him, it cripples their lineup. They lose their best hitter. And now you don't necessarily have the lineup protection in front of Corbin Carroll that you need. Because when you look at the end of the season, probably the best move Torey Lovullo made in 2025 was putting Carlo Perdomo in the leadoff spot. And Perdomo was really good at creating offense on his pretty good at creating offense on his own and also grinding pitchers. He's the ideal fit for a leadoff spot. Not to mention the fact he's also capable of stealing a base, but that's only part of the equation. So Perdomo's the ideal leadoff hitter. You have Ketel Marte, who can bring you both who's the total package as a hitter. On base percentage, slug, discipline at the plate, can drive himself in if he has to. That's what you want to put in a situation where you have a dynamic hitter that can produce offense no matter who's on base in front of him. And then you have Corbin Carroll, who's probably the best power hitter in the Diamondbacks lineup. It's a situation where you probably want to put that hitter third, because that's the situation where you're probably going to find yourself with two outs, nobody on, and Carroll's your best power hitter, so you put that. And plus, he can also walk and use his speed to create a run. So, like I said, that with those three there, that's your 1, 2, 3, and for the rest of the decade. Perdomo 1, Marte 2, Carroll 3. That's your lineup. You can put that in stone through 2029 if they're all there through then. And they all should be. They're all under contract through there. In fact, you can make an argument they're all going to be there in 2030, assuming things go well. So at the end of the day, Marte will be probably discussed locked. They may even come close to deal. The deal may happen, but I trust Hazen to not screw up the situation and alienate the team by trading Ketel Marte because he has to. I don't think it's going to be a payroll thing. It's going to come down to just getting the right play. It would have to come down to getting the right deal for that to happen. And Hazen has no reason to sell for anything less. So moving on to the third topic here, we'll talk about a free agent Diamondbacks been linked to. I already wrote about that for Dbacks under review. Pete Fairbanks was a player the Diamondbacks reached out to and engaged in talks to see what his market is. I don't know if they actually went past the kick the tires phase regarding him. And then obviously, of course, this is a name that's been floating around as a trade candidate for a long time. So Fairbanks was once probably one of the most dominant closers in baseball, threw 100 regularly, 100 plus, average 99. But curiously enough, the last 2 seasons, his fastball velocity dipped 2 miles an hour and strikeouts have evaporated. So if we compare, his strikeout rate in 22 was 43% with a 3.4% walk rate. I mean, a 40 strikeout minus walk rate season is just insane. In 2022, Pete Fairbanks is absolutely unhittable, but of course, he only threw 350 pitches. And if you're going to trade for a closer, you obviously have to make sure he's healthy. And that was actually one thing that went in Fairbanks' favor in 25. You'll definitely take a guy that threw 60 appearances, and maybe you trade a little bit of dominance for availability. And we'll pull so that's why I think he'll have a slightly better market now. And I think that was probably one of the, especially now, given the season he didn't bounce back when his strikeout rate cratered in 24, went from 37% down to under 24. And if you're talking about a closer arm, you don't necessarily want someone who doesn't miss bats, because you don't have biggest reason is you don't have a safety net behind you. We'll zoom out a little bit. You don't have a safety net behind you. That's kind of the concern with Fairbanks. So you can see, as you can see from his pitch plot, he's added a cutter. He's working on it more, and I think it's a really good complementary pitch, especially when you have I guess you say a cut ride fastball. Like when you say a cut ride fastball, he basically is cutting his fastball, and you get a fairly decent amount of ride on it. It's kind of in that same pitch shaping as Taylor Rashi, although Rashi's more consistently to the left of this zero line. And of course, for everyone listening, a zero line just means zero horizontal break. There are fastballs that will break glove side, but that has more to do with how the pitcher throws. And in Fairbanks, obviously having a very high arm angle relative to the ground, almost straight over the top delivery. He's going to get a lot of rise, but not a lot of run on his fastball. You can see it's pretty much purely vertical in shape. So we go down the pitch typings with Fairbanks. The fastball's okay. Like you'll take fastball did pretty well. Pitch that kind of concerns me is the slider is kind of went from dominant in 24 to average in 25. Slider's the one pitch that kind of concerns me a little bit. The nice thing, like I said, he's added a cutter. That should be a good bridge pitch between the four seamer and the slider. The four seamer with a 17 up, 0 down, and the slider is like -5, -5. You can get a pitch that's kind of in between. And in between, you can see in Fairbanks' case, I think with more reps, it's not going to be a 3 up, 5 gloves cutter. I think we'll see a little bit more rise as he works with it. And the kind of nice thing about Fairbanks learning cutters, the Diamondbacks have plenty of pitchers that throw cutters. Corbin Burns, even though he's not pitching until the All-Star break, there's no hint of him possibly pitching until at least, I guess you could say mid-June at the early halfway point of the season, which is like the end of June. Have that. Nelson throws a cutter at Rodriguez, Thought. And so there's plenty of pitchers that can teach him how to work on that cutter. I think you kind of get that cutter a little bit more distinct away from the slider. I think will work out a little bit. Especially in the velocity gap right there is pretty good. You got 97 on four-seamer cutter, 90, 91, and the slider 85. We'll see how that goes, like I said. I think Fairbanks, if the Diamondbacks wanted to, you can kick the tires, give him like a 1-year deal with one or two plus one or 1 plus option. Or it's a situation where Fairbanks, if he has a good year, could hit the market again at 32. After his age 32 season, and it's a situation maybe, or if he doesn't have a great season but gets a decent guarantee behind it. So I would argue the best contract to give Fairbanks would be 2 years and 20 million maximum. I think with guarantee you probably set at 15. Sorry. I think the minimum guarantee you said is $16 million, and then you would add up based on number of appearances, because Fairbanks does have an injury history, only one season where he's thrown more than 50 games. I think it's a situation where an incentive-laden contract, I think, would work out. It's a situation, maybe you have depending on the number of appearances, you can have a club option that converts to either a vesting or a player option. Player option opt-out situation. Club option that converts to a mutual option. There we go. Situation. That's this kind of contract. If you did a 1-year contract, I do 1 in 10. You see where it goes. Sorry, 1 in 8 with the maximum of 10. See where that goes. Like I said, I don't think he's going to get a Helsley type deal. I wrote that down when I did my Fairbanks breakdown, but that's what he's looking for, not necessarily what he'll get. So that's kind of just my take on things. And if everyone enjoyed, thank you for listening into the Dbacks Under Review pilot episode. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment down below what you think of the Mike Soroka deal or what you think a fair contract for Pete Fairbanks should be. So once again, I'm Mike McDermott from Dbacks Under Review. You can check out all my written work on the Diamondbacks at dbacksunderreview.com. That takes you to my Substack page. And thank you for listening.